Hey, good morning. How we doing? We okay? Yeah. Wow. I'm okay. I'm pretty excited to be here. Not sure about you. We're in the Gospel of John. If you have a Bible, you're going to need it. You can go ahead and start to open to chapter 8. I'll be there in about 30 seconds. All right. As you're opening, happy Veterans Day, right? A number of you have served our country. Thank you so much. It's a huge thing. So, thank you. Just on Wednesday, the two of our volunteers, they went off to basic training. So we're very grateful for those that have served and those that are serving today. We're looking at 4 of the 7 I am statements from the Gospel of John. If you have no idea what this I am thing means, watch last week's message. I spent about 10 minutes just talking about the significance of the I am statements. Today we're going to continue. Chapter 8 holds within itself the second I am statement that came from Jesus. We're going to just look at verse 12 through verse 20, okay? We're going to just hang out for the next 25 to 30 to 65 minutes, all right, in just this little passage right here. So let me read it. Why don't you guys stand up, all right? Stand up. I'm just going to read the Word of God, okay? Some traditions do this all the time. We don't. There's really nothing traditional we do, but this is a really cool thing to posture ourselves out of reverence for God's Word, okay? This is His timeless and transformational truth to us. Let me just read verse 12 through verse 20, John chapter 8. Okay. When Jesus spoke again to the people, He said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. The Pharisees challenged Him. Of course they did. Here you are, appearing as your own witness. Your testimony is not valid. Jesus answered, even if I testify on my own behalf, my testimony is valid, for I know where I came from and where I'm going. But you have no idea where I came from or where I am going. You judge by human standards. I pass judgment on no one. But if I do judge, my decisions are right, because I am not alone. I stand with the Father who sent me. In your own law, it is written that the testimony of 2 men is valid. I am one who testifies for myself. My other witness is the Father who sent me. And that's a really good other witness. Verse 19, then they asked Him, well, where is your Father? You do not know me or my Father, Jesus replied. If you knew me, you would know my Father also. Verse 20, He spoke these words while teaching in the temple area near the place where the offerings were put. Yet no one seized Him because His time had not yet come. This is the word of God. You can be seated. We're going to talk about this metaphor of light, right? Jesus, thankfully, used some of these metaphors to help us understand God, to help us understand His mission in the world. And this is a key metaphor, right? Light. And when we look into this metaphor, there's some things absolutely that we have to see. The first is this, is light, it comforts. Light comforts, doesn't it? Like if you've done an all-nighter before, like you were just like waiting, right, for that first flickering of light. If you live in Chicago, which all of us do, there are moments where we don't see the sun for like months, right? This week, I think it was like a 3-day stretch, and I was just like this, like walking around, and then like all of a sudden through the office window, the light came out, and it was amazing. Like I jumped up, I ran outside, I'm like, the light is here, this is amazing, this is amazing. Light comforts, light comforts. One of the incredible things is that when we see here Jesus, He's talking about that He is the light of the world. And at the same time, because He is the light, it means this, that those that will follow Him, then they too will be the light of the world. They will bring comfort with them. Wherever their feet take them, that's where comfort will be. That's where comfort will be. Some of you need comfort this morning, don't you? Am I the only one that needs comfort this morning? Okay, I was on baby duty yesterday. I've got a 1-year-old, and I was trying to watch the Alabama game, and she didn't understand that, all right? She didn't get it. And Kelly was meeting with one of our high school students at Starbucks, and she's like, I'll be gone for a little while. And so there I am, and Hallie, she's just screaming. She's got 5 to 20 teeth coming in right now at once. Not good, not good. And so it felt like 5 hours, and look at my watch, she'd only been gone like 10 minutes. I'm like, this is not good. And then she started something new. I was telling Kelly this last night. We kind of debrief our day, and there's days like yesterday where we're just like, we made it. We didn't die. That, sometimes that's our goal. Yeah. And so I was telling Kelly, I said, Hallie started this new thing. And I'm holding her, trying to hold her. She doesn't want to be held because she's like my brother. She's just all energy all the time. So I'm trying to hold her. And the second I take my eyes off her, she smacks me right in the side of the face. Like that hard. She's just really strong for her age. She's very gifted. And so, I'm like, what is this? Right? So I discipline her, right? I mean, she's one, she can understand, I think. So I'm like, don't do that, please. I said it in a more loving tone, I think. And so then I turn my eyes back because I need to watch the game. Bam! Again, right in the side of the face. She did this like 10 times. I'm like, Kelly, like keep your eyes on her. Like she's on a mission. We did something wrong this last week and she's not happy about it, right? And some of us, man, we feel like we've just been slapped around, right? All week. I mean, something your boss did or something your wife did or didn't do, something your roommate should have done, right? I mean, these are moments where we come into these seats. We've been slapped around. Hopefully for you, it's kind of metaphorically. For me, like really have been slapped around. And this is what light does. Light brings us comfort. I thought Yvonne did an awesome job hosting this morning and just sharing what God did at the Day of Beauty. We've been singing about the light of the world. And at the end of the service, you'll hear a song Tommy wrote about the light of the world. And I just love how to finish that Day of Beauty, they said, all right, we receive the light to be light, right? Like we experience the light so that others can experience the light. And this is something we're passionate about as a church. We want to be carriers of light. And when we do this, right? I mean, people feel comforted. I told you today is the day we're going to announce something that we're doing. A lot of things happen, like the gift baskets, just kind of randomly throughout the year. A number of you are convinced that God has called you to your street, and so you love your neighbors in all kinds of ways, right? So throughout the year, lots of awesome light kind of carrying things happen, but there are a few times a year when we all kind of combine together as a church to be light to our city, and that's coming up. If you've been in Starbucks, you've noticed that Christmas is on the way, all right? And yeah, I know, it just keeps getting earlier every year. But we are planning right now for what we're going to do around the Christmas season. There's a number of you that are brand new to our church, and we're really glad you're here. There's a number of you that you've been here now for the past 56 weeks. And you remember what we did last year around this time. It's called the Holiday Gift Mart, the Holiday Gift Mart. And we're excited, all right, about this. It's awesome. A very, very tangible way for us to live out what we see here in the text, what we see from the Sermon on the Mount, right? To be a city on a hill, to light up our city with the love and generosity of God. That's what the Holiday Gift Mart is about. When we do this, we actually bring comfort. We've focused on Hanover Park. We love all the 10, and we're going to continue to bring hope to all of the 10, but for now, we're just pouring tons of effort into Hanover Park specifically. Last year, we partnered with one school for the Holiday Gift Mart. This year, we're going to partner with 2 schools. We're really excited about that, Hanover Highlands and then Fox Elementary School. About 60 to 70% of these families lived under the poverty line. Tremendous need and tremendous opportunity, all right, for us to be light, to bring comfort. Last year, our goal, and we were only a few weeks old at the time, our goal was 1,000 brand new toys priced between, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was like between $6 and $20, something like that. $1,000 toys was our crazy goal. But there was only a couple hundred of us last year. We've doubled that or so. So this year, we just felt like we would double that, all right? So our goal this year is 2,000 toys. Are we ready to hit 2,000 toys? I hope so. I hope so. And some of you, all right, some of you skeptics, all right, and I understand. I was in my 20s too at one point. You're saying, well, what good is that going to do? I mean, it's just a toy, right? Let me tell you the good that can do. After the Gift Mart last year, we got invited to a school board meeting. There's 60 people there, teachers, school board people, and they gave us this award. And I have this by my desk to remind me of the kind of church I want us to continue to be. And School District 54 presents this certificate of recognition to Mission Church for donating school materials and 1,600 new toys for the Holiday Gift Mart. And the principal of the school, who's now a good friend of mine, he began to cast the vision to this entire room of the kind of church that we want to be. I mean, he was really just talking about John 8, right? And he was just saying, like, these guys are on the move. I mean, they're a church that never sleeps. They're serving. They're doing all kinds of things. And as he began to tell them that about this church that was only a few weeks old, just raised 1,000 toys for families they didn't even know, the faces of the people there, they didn't even have a category for it. This is what happens when we begin to embody what Jesus is talking about. Light brings comfort. There are so many people in our city that need comfort. And there are times like this where we can be tangible comfort. No child should ever walk down the stairs on Christmas morning with nothing under the tree. Something we can do. Something we can do together. So I'm very excited about that. Some of you that are planners, you're wondering, well, when can I begin to shop, right? All you needed was an excuse to go to Target or Target, depending. And so it's at the end of November. The last Sunday of November. I can't think of the date off the top of my head. The last Sunday of November is when you can start to bring your toys in. If you remember last year's, the last thing I'll say, then I'll move on. Like toys were just like all over the lobby. All right? That was like my daughter Hannah's favorite Sunday ever until she realized they weren't for her, right? I mean, she's like trying to steal stuff. I'm like, what is going on? So don't steal the toys. That would be good. But you can begin to bring those at the end of November, and they'll be like 2 weeks in a row. And then we'll serve on Saturday. I can't remember the Saturday. We'll continue to keep you guys updated on that. What are we talking about? We're talking about John chapter 8 when Jesus says something crazy. I am the light of the world. First thing that we know from this metaphor of light is that light comforts. But light does some other things. Light also disturbs. It disturbs. Number of us, we've been living in the Gospel of John. All right, I've been spending way too much time researching every morning, doing these devotionals, but it's been just so powerful for me. And for the 7 days in a row, right, we've been seeing how Jesus, he comforted, but he also disturbed some people, right? It's unbelievable. I mean, we see people that are just like, oh, right? Chapter 6, a couple days ago, we knew who was just the crowd and then who were the disciples. The crowd left. His teaching's too hard. I mean, Jesus disturbs. He disturbs. And this is exactly what we see from this metaphor of light. When I was younger, I would go to pool parties and I would wear a t-shirt as I would swim. My brothers mocked me and made fun of me so much. I'm big boned, I'm husky. I've always just had one ab my whole life, right? I mean, it's powerful. It's a power ab, right? But I've just always just had an ab. And, I was really insecure. Now I could care less, right? I'm like, I outkicked my coverage in Marion Kelly. I don't really care. I overachieved. And, but when I was younger, I mean, I would wear a t-shirt when I would go swimming. I didn't want anyone to see my ab. And some of you can relate to that. Before your beach trip, if you've ever been on one, you're like getting the spray tan, you're like trying to work stuff off. Right? Light exposes, doesn't it? Man, it exposes. I mean, there are times where like you only want to look in the mirror when the lights are off. Light disturbs. And this is what we see from Jesus. We see this from his metaphor, and we see it from the metaphor, and we see this from his life. Light comforts, and it disturbs. The other thing I just want to mention pretty quickly is this. All throughout the Gospel of John, and we see this from verses 13 and 18, we see the word sent pop up again a few times. Before our first service this morning, I asked everyone in the circle, so how's God been speaking to you through the Gospel of John? And Dawn, Francis Sheena, she's like, we are sent. She's like, I'm seeing it over and over again, like we are sent. We are sent. This whole sentness thing, it's actually one of the key motifs of the Gospel of John. It's one of the distinctives of the entire gospel. Over 25 times we see this picture that we are sent because he was sent. It helps us understand the mission of God, or the Missio Dei, right? Where the Father sent the Son, and the Son sent the Spirit, and the Spirit sends you and me. He sends the church. We are sent. We are sent agents of the King. The more we understand this metaphor, where we are called to bring comfort and we are called to disturb, and as we do this, we are the sent agents of the King. Something I want us to look at that we have to see is how this passage ends. It's in verse 20, and I'm going to talk about this for a little bit. Let me just read this. This is in verse 20. He spoke these words while teaching in the temple area near the place where the offerings were put, yet no one seized him because his time had not yet come. No one seized him. Why did people want to kill Jesus? I said this last weekend. They didn't want to seize him. That's a nice way of saying, like, they didn't want to kill him. It wasn't because he was a good teacher, and he was. It wasn't because he was loving, and he was. It wasn't because he loved the poor, and he did. They wanted to kill him for these I am statements. They wanted to kill him for the things that he was saying. They wanted to wipe him out, because the reality was this: is if he really was the light, then that meant that these other religious rulers weren't. I mean, they wanted to seize him. Now, there's a few things. You guys know I love context, right? Which means, like, what was going on in the first century when this was written really helps us understand the text. I love history. Maybe that's partly why. But the more we understand the context of what's going on, it's just like, it's unbelievable how much we can see, from the Word. And there's a lot actually going on right here in John 8 from a context standpoint. You probably noticed verse 12 where it says, when Jesus spoke again to the people, and maybe you didn't notice that, and that's okay. What that means is that verse, or chapter 8 is connected to chapter 7, okay? When Jesus spoke again, chapter 8, it means it was connected to chapter 7. Well, what do we know in chapter 7? We know this. We know that it is another feast. We know that it is another feast. It was the Feast of the Tabernacles. Say that with me, Feast of the Tabernacles. Feast of the Tabernacles. And you know what this means, all right? So I'm just going to tell a few of you that don't. The feasts were this. In the Old Testament, we see that these feasts happen regularly. And really, at the end of the day, the hope was that these feasts would remind them of the glory of God. That these feasts would remind them of the faithfulness of God. He's been with us, right? So we do the Passover feast. That one gets a lot of cred. You've probably heard of that one. Feast of the Tabernacles, not so much. I don't know why. I think it was probably a great feast, but it didn't get any cred. We do these feasts so that we can remember and be reminded of who God is and what he has done on our behalf. Well, chapter 7, the Feast of the Tabernacles is taking place. Let me just explain a little bit of what's going on. I never knew this, okay? I never knew this until I spent some time in this. Partly the commentary I'm reading, partly God love him, praise Jesus, heaven on high for Pastor Timothy Keller. And so 3 things take place at the Feast of the Tabernacles. And I can tell you guys are so excited. I mean, you're ready. You're ready to take notes on this. It's 7 days in length. How many days? 7, right? 7, they love, like 3, 12, 7, like I don't know, they love those numbers. 7 days in length, okay? 3 things happened that were a little bit odd. The first was they made these little huts, and they slept in them. How many of you love camping? Not, okay, maybe we're not a camping church, and that's fine, all right? But those of us who love to get into a little Coleman tent, right? I mean, this was like our feast, right? So you would do this. You would make these little huts, and you'd camp, right? S'mores, I don't think was involved back then, but they would make these huts. Why would they do that? They would do that so that they would remember how in the wilderness God provided shelter for them. This is one thing that I love about the Old Testament and some of the things that they did. They did these very tangible things, right? They would build all their altars, they do all these things to just remind them of God's provision. It's one of the things that we can really learn from them. They built these huts, and they would hang out, they would sleep in them to remind them of how God provided shelter. All right, the second thing that they did is they would have a water ceremony. Now, it would kind of culminate, all right, the 7 days, and they'd do this water ceremony, and some of the priests would walk around the altar 7 times. Again, 7's kind of a big deal. Also Jericho, stuff going on there. Okay, if you don't know what that means, you can read book Joshua. All right, we're back. They're walking around 7 times. And then they took this huge water jug. I'm not sure if it was a jug or a cup, but it was big, okay, a lot of water in it. And they would raise it up, and like, you can kind of imagine the crowd, right? Any God-fearing Jew would be there, like crowd, like, oh, there he goes. And so he raises up the water, and they pour out the water on the altar. This was a really big moment. Now, why would they do that? Well, when we look in the Old Testament, we see that they were wandering around like in the desert, right? If you've never been to the desert, it's hot. It's really hot. And you get really thirsty when you're really hot, right? No water in sight. But what happened? God provided, didn't he? I mean, a rock was struck, and bam, out comes water. Unbelievable. So what did? They did this water ceremony to remind them of the faithfulness of God, of his provision. That even in places where you're not supposed to find water, man, God shows up and he provides for us. I said there's 3 things that they do, right? camping, the water bit, and then the third part. It's really important. They would do this candle ceremony. They would light any candle that they could find, as many candles as possible to try to light up the temple area. As the temple things kind of progressed, they would light a candelabra. Say that with me, a candelabra. It's a really fun word. I've never really used it until today. But a candelabra, maybe you have one, I don't, but they would light this mat. Do you know what a candelabra is? All right, it's just a picture like a whole bunch of candles together, all right? That's what it means in the Greek, a collection of candles, I think. All right, so they would light all these candles, okay? And they would be right there at the front. Now, why would they light these candles? I think that's a great question. I'm really glad you asked. They would light the candles because of this. When they were kind of just walking around, roaming around in the wilderness, God showed up, didn't he? God actually provided direction for them, didn't he? And he did this by giving them guidance by a cloud by day. Do you remember this? And then by night, do you guys remember what he did if you've ever read it? Well, what did he do by night? What was it called? A pillar of fire by night. And I wasn't there, all right? I don't know exactly how it went down. But what we do know is that as they looked into the sky, they saw what they would call the glory of God. There he was. It's a pillar of fire. He's our light. He hasn't left us. In this light, it would actually lead them. It would help them to know where to go to the left or to the right. It would guide them. This is incredible. They'd light these candles to remind them of the light. Something that they do on the seventh day is they'd blow out all the candles. This was a really sad day. This was a really sad moment. How many of you are, you love like Christmas lights, all right? You're already some of you already did it this weekend. You're like, warm weather, let's do it. Clark, here we go. Griswold, we're doing this thing. The worst moment of the year for you is sometime in April when you unplug the lights, right? It's like weeping. You got to meet with friends to talk it out, hug it out, the whole nine. When those lights are unplugged, you're reminded that, man, we've got to wait, until late October, early November until we can set out our lights again. All right, times that by 10,000. Man, if we can just imagine, being there, seeing all these candles lit. Man, they living in these huts for 7 days. They doing this water thing. They lit all these candles. Within that moment comes where all the candles are blown out. As I said, that pillar of fire, this was the Shekinah glory of God. They would say, man, this is the glory of God. But something in the Old Testament happened in one word, Ichabod. And what that means is the glory has departed. That's why they blew these candles out. The glory had departed. And the amount of sadness and despair, we'll never get it. But if we can just even get close to that, we can just picture when those candles being blown out reminded them that, man, they hadn't heard from God in a long time. 400 years between the Old Testament and the New Testament, silence. Silence. I find it amazing that in the Christmas story, the silence was broken by a light there in the sky, right? For the world to see. And the reason they wanted to kill Jesus was because he stood there, we know from the text, right there in front of the candelabra, at the height of this whole deal, right after the candles were blown out, and he stands there right in front. And he says, in essence, the day of Ichabod is over because the glory is here right now. The light of the world has come. It's me. And everything in the Torah and in the Old Testament that helped you see and understand God, I am here now in the flesh, as John 1 starts to tell us, right? In the Word, he became flesh and he dwelled among us. And what do they say after that? What does John say, the evangelist? Man, we've seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, right? Jesus saying right there, for the few that maybe understood it. And glory, it's right here. I'm the light of the world. I'm the light of the world. The last part of verse 20 says that his time had not yet come. Have you guys been like underlining that the last 7 days as we've been walking through John? Like over and over again, right? We are seeing Jesus say, like, right, they try to like catch him and then he's like gone, right? Awesome. I don't know how that all worked out. But his time had not yet come. We were talking about this at our mission group on Tuesday night. Chris Stewart and Dan Aruda, those guys write our discussion guides for all of our groups every week. And I want to thank you guys for the way that you've been working at that to help us as groups really connect to what's going on. It's been so powerful. Our group, it's just been unbelievable. And, we're sitting there Tuesday night, and we're having an incredible discussion. I love hearing from people's perspectives, And this time came where we were talking about how, his time had not yet come yet. And so I was talking to a guy about that, and he's like, man, I don't get it. Like, is he kind of running from them? I'm like, well, his time hadn't come yet, but 6 months after John chapter 8 was going to be another feast, the Passover, and his time was going to come then. The light, so often in their context, right, a candle would be lit and be raised high so that it could just illuminate an entire room. Well, 6 months after this in John 8, the time would come where the light of the world, it wouldn't be a candle, it'd be a cross. It wouldn't be raised in a room, he'd actually be raised on top of a hill called Calvary. And as I was telling this guy, my buddy on Tuesday night, I'm like, Jesus could have gotten out of that too. He could have escaped. He's second member of the Trinity. He could have just got right off that cross if he wanted to, but he didn't. He stayed. The time had come. He was raised so that the world could see and understand the light. We see in the gospel, sometimes he speaks in parables. Sometimes people are like, I just can't get it. But on that moment, 6 months after this, in a way unlike we could never forget, we understood finally who the light of the world is. His time had come. Our band is going to come now, and Tommy I asked him to write a song on each one of the I am statements that we're talking about. A number of you got the album last week, My Reckoning. If not, you can get it on iTunes, and I don't think it's on vinyl yet. We're working on that. And apparently, since they did a whole album, it's easy to write a song every week. So what a number of us are doing is every morning we're getting this video devotional, right? You're stuck with me for a couple more weeks now, and we're just in the Word, and then we're just writing and journaling or something like that. Not all of us do that, but I do that. At least it helps me. And so I asked Tommy, would you just kind of do the same, but just specifically through these 4 I Ams that we're going to talk about, and then put that to music on what God is saying to you. And so we're going to sing about the light of the world. But before we do that, as this section started that I read, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. It raises the question, how do we know when we're really following Jesus? How do we know? How do we know when we're really following the light of the world? My answer would be, you will be feeling to your core tremendous amounts of comfort. When you open the scriptures, how do we know that we're, like not just making them say whatever we want them to say, which we're really good at, by the way. We're finding tremendous comfort. At the same time, how do we know when we're really following Jesus? It's not when we're just comforted, it's actually when we're disturbed. When we open the scriptures, how do we know that we're really beginning to let the scriptures read us? It's when we're disturbed. It's when we're disturbed. It's both. It's both. And this is what Jesus came to do. He came to comfort the disturbed, and he came to disturb the comfortable. And some of us this morning, right, you came in here disturbed. Maybe it's the week you had, maybe it's the month you had. Maybe it's an experience with church you had a long time ago. You came in these doors very disturbed. In the light of the world, he wants to comfort you. He wants you to understand that he came and he gave his life for you, for the glory of God, right? He wants to comfort you. As you open the Word, he wants to comfort you. And some of us, we came in here today way too comfortable. We have organized Jesus and his power right out of our life. He wants to disturb you. I mean, Jesus is like the 10th on our priority list. If we were to look at our calendar the last month, right? I'll go first, and I'm a pastor. I mean, I'm just telling you, there are weeks and there are months where I'm just like, this is unbelievable. I mean, the light of the world, the Son of God, I mean, he wants to commune with me, and yet I treat him like, and if that's you, he wants to disturb you this morning. That's why we do this. It's to comfort and it's to disturb, both at the same time. And I don't know which camp you fall in, but my prayer is this, is that you will understand, that I will understand in fresh ways of who Jesus is. Who is Jesus? He's the light of the world, the great I am. He's the only one worthy of following. He's our senior pastor, for the record. He's the only one worthy of our worship. On that day, man, it was him letting everyone know, listen, the day of Ichabod is over. The glory is here. I've come for you. Those who place their faith in me, they will find life to the full. I'm the light of the world. Father, we thank you for the way that you, through your word, you help us with these metaphors that just help us a little bit more clearly see and understand you. And God, some of us this morning, we desperately need to be comforted. And we've been slapped around by life and challenges and things we weren't expecting. Oh, Jesus, would you just comfort people? In the name of Jesus, would you just comfort people right now? Help them know that they're not alone. Help them know that they belong here. Doesn't matter what they did last year or last night, they belong here. Comfort. At the same time, God, I pray for those of us who are far too comfortable. And we look at the last week and we haven't even talked to you, we haven't even thought of you. We're living in our own strength and we know it's not really working. God, would you disturb us to the degree that we would replace ourselves as king and make you the king? Disturb us. You're the light of the world. You're the light of the world. We thank you and we praise you, Jesus. We ask this in your name.